Recently, I've been nearing the end of my year, and I say this just as the last day of school is today, but just imagine with me. I'm nearing the end of the year, and it's Saturday. I wake up, it's all good. I think I have no more assignments for like the rest of the year because it's like June already. Then I go on my PC, I open up the tab that goes to my school profile page, and I check the calendar, and there are three notifications. And those three notifications are three separate teachers assigning three separate tests on Monday. So much for being free. In school, tests usually aren't that spaced out. And the farther along you get in the education system, the less the teachers try and hide it. So obviously, because of all of that pressure on one day, you spend the week prior to it studying for it. Every day you're thinking about that 1 week, about that one day, about all of those tests. You dedicate your life to it and you just throw everything aside for the time being. And this is often where people say stuff like, I'll start that next week, or I don't have time for this right now, I'll just do it later. I'll be happy after these tests. Can you see where this is going? So I went to school on Monday, I took all of those three tests, I did pretty well on all of them, and I was free for the rest of the week. So how do you think I felt? Very, very underwhelmed. I mean, I was happy, I suppose, but it was nothing like what I imagined it would feel like. If anything, the feeling was more of what's next type of vibe. And that seems crazy because like, what? Are you actually like enjoying studying for these tests, like taking them? And obviously not, but still, it's better than having nothing. Studying for these tests, this gave me honestly a purpose to live. I know it sounds messed up, but when you don't have any direction in life, that's when you do stuff like play video games, sleep in, just stare at a ceiling for like 10 hours because you genuinely have nothing better to do. These teachers assigning all of these major tests, it gave you a synthetic goal and purpose that you could work towards. After the tests were finished, you'd go straight to your computer and keep hitting refresh to see when new tests would appear, because they always do. I was almost living my life test to test, because the purpose that it synthesized was so much more powerful than having nothing. But does doing well on these tests actually make me fulfilled? Well, no. And that's why this is just a terrible way to live. Because after you do well on those tests, after you hand in that paper, all you're left with is just the chance to look back on that whole week, maybe those whole 2 weeks that you spent studying for this. And you probably realize that, well, you didn't accomplish anything you actually wanted to while studying for this. Sure, studying definitely helped you get good grades, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, that's a good thing. But maybe you didn't work on the project that you've been wanting to work on for a few months now. Maybe you actually regressed in some of the good habits you've been building. Maybe you sacrificed even more sleep than you usually do. This way, students and honestly most people put off starting what they really want to start onto a time in the future, the perfect time that will exist. But the problem with those times is that they never last long. And the second they end, people are thrown back straight into the hard times and they usually just quit the thing they wanted to work on. And if we say, let's say 10% of your life is made up of these perfect times, the other 90%, are you just living test to test, paycheck to paycheck, sacrificing that 90% of your life so you can spend the measly 10% working on what you truly want to achieve? An instantaneous action step that you can do right now if you have a bunch of tests next week is just visualize yourself getting 100 on every single test. Like, visualize your teachers handing you back the paper, you got 100. Every single one. Now think, if that was already guaranteed, what would you do now? If you didn't have to study, what would you want to dedicate your time to? And just go do that. Obviously, you have to study. But at some point, in my experience, students use extra studying almost as an excuse to not start something that's honestly more difficult, like a new habit, I don't know, going to the gym. And so you put it off onto that 10% of perfect times, onto your future self. If you're watching this video, there's a pretty high chance that you've tried implementing some sort of self-improvement stuff, like starting going to the gym regularly, maybe starting cold showers in the morning, meditating, all that stuff. And my question to you is, when did you start? Was it during the 90% of difficult times where you had a bunch of stuff going on, you had tests, I don't know, work, your boss was like yelling at you? Was it during those times, or was it the 10% of perfect times, maybe during summer break or like vacation? If you're like me, you probably started during the perfect times. And unfortunately, there's a very high chance that if you didn't fail within the first week, you're going to fail within the first month. Okay, just use your logic for this one, right? If you start something hard when it's easy, it's going to be almost impossible to continue when everything around it also gets hard, when life comes back and punches you in the face. But if you start something hard when life is already hard and you just persevere through it, after a while, that perfect time is going to come. And then, well, obviously, everything's easier now, so you're obviously going to continue the habit. It's really easy to push off something difficult onto your future self and use the excuse of, I don't have time right now, it's difficult right now, to not do it right now. It's kind of the same when you assume you're gonna work really hard during school breaks, because when you come home from a school break, you feel like you need to take some time off to, relax, unwind after the school year, you've worked so hard. And then after a while, after that break ends, you already have a million excuses for why you should just continue taking the break and not start work. That's what I found. It's much harder to actually start stuff, like hard stuff, when it is already easy. It's like if you have a car going at 100 miles per hour, it's much easier to add an extra 10 miles per hour and go 110 than if you're starting like from a parked car. Maybe it's like an old car, probably manual transmission. Like it's gonna take a while to get up to 10 miles per hour compared to if you're already at 100. As an example, I had started cold showers in the morning as a habit, and I decided to start it while the school year was still like more or less active. I still had a bunch of tests, and it was actually really painful to get up at 6:30 a.m. and go in the cold ass shower and then go straight to school and all the tests. And that built up my discipline. So when the break came, I actually thought it'd be easier, but it got harder because my schedule changed. So now I could sleep in a little bit, then I slept in, I was already a bit lazy, and it's like there's no pressure to get ready and go fast to school, so why would I take a cold shower anyway? But the discipline I built up during the hard times transferred over to the easy times, and I continued the habit. In summary, what you expect to be an easy time to start something hard actually turns out to be a harder time. Because if you're already doing something hard, it's honestly, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's easier to add something else that's also hard on top of it. If you're already relaxed, chilling in your jacuzzi or whatever, like it's much harder to just go out and like hit a workout. And if you start something during a break, once the school year starts, you're gonna have like 5 million excuses. If you always start when the times are the hardest, not only will you build discipline, you'll also build a resilience of your habit against basically anything that can come at it. And you will destroy everybody that put off their hard work onto some future time, onto their future self. Don't be the type of guy that realizes in the last 10% of his life that he spent the first 90% not living, just living test to test. Alright, bro. I hope this helped you. Go do some push-ups.